Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon, her eyes fixed on the impossible structure floating in the void ahead. The alien artifact twisted and curved in ways that made her stomach churn, yet she couldn't look away. It was beautiful, mesmerizing even, like a sculpture made of liquid mathematics. "Captain, the readings are off the charts," Lieutenant Martinez reported from the sensor station. His voice carried a mix of excitement and unease. "The structure appears to be composed of a material that bends space-time around itself. The curves we're seeing, they're not just visual, they're dimensional." Sarah nodded slowly, her training kicking in despite the awe. Humanity had encountered alien technology before, but nothing quite like this. The structure resembled a massive spiral shell, but one that seemed to fold in on itself repeatedly, creating loops and curves that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. "Keep our distance at 2,000 kilometers, she ordered. "And someone get Dr. Kowalski up here. We need our best physicist on this." The crew worked with practiced efficiency, their fingers dancing across holographic displays. The Horizon had been exploring the outer rim of the galaxy for 3 years, cataloging new systems and searching for signs of intelligent life. This was their most significant discovery yet. Dr. Kowalski arrived within minutes, his wild gray hair even more disheveled than usual. He took one look at the main view screen and whistled low. "My God," he whispered. "It's using non-Euclidean geometry. Those curves, they're folding through higher dimensions." "English?" "Doctor," Sarah said with a slight smile. She respected the physicist's brilliance, but she needed information her entire crew could understand. "Think of it like this," Kowalski explained, his hands moving animatedly. "Imagine a piece of paper. Now fold it so 2 distant points touch. That's a simple example of bending space. This structure is doing that, but in ways our brains aren't designed to fully comprehend. It's beautiful because our minds are trying to make sense of something that exists partially outside our normal 3 dimensions. Engineer Thompson spoke up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting an energy signature from the structure. It's singing, for lack of a better word. The frequency is unlike anything in our database." Sarah felt the familiar tingle of discovery mixed with caution. Every great find in human history came with risks. "Can we translate it?" "Working on it," Communications Officer Park replied. Her fingers flew across her console. "The pattern is mathematical, almost like... Wait." Her face paled. "Captain, the frequency is starting to affect our instruments. Minor fluctuations in the navigation system." "Shields up," Sarah ordered immediately. "Yellow alert." The bridge lighting shifted to a soft amber glow. The crew moved with increased focus, their training evident in every motion. Humans might be relatively new to the galactic stage, but they'd learned to be cautious. "Captain," Dr. Kowalski said slowly, studying his tablet. "I think I understand what this is. The curves aren't just decorative, they're functional. This entire structure is a kind of gateway, or maybe a key. The geometry itself is the mechanism." "A key to what?" Sarah asked. Before Kowalski could answer, the structure pulsed. A wave of light rippled along its impossible curves, and the singing frequency intensified. On the view screen, the artifact began to rotate slowly, its curves seeming to multiply and divide like a living thing. "It's responding to our presence," Martinez reported. "Energy output increasing by 200%. Sarah's mind raced. First contact protocols ran through her head, but this wasn't a ship or a being. It was something else entirely. "Park, try to establish a communication pattern. Use prime numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, anything that might indicate intelligence." "Aye, Captain." The bridge fell into tense silence, broken only by the soft beeping of instruments and the whispered reports between crew members. Sarah watched the structure continue its hypnotic dance. The curves seemed to beckon, promising secrets and knowledge beyond human understanding. "Captain," Park said suddenly, I'm getting a response. The structure is mimicking our signals but adding complexity. It's teaching us its language. Dr. Kowalski rushed to Park's station, his eyes bright with excitement. Incredible. It's using mathematical principles as a baseline for communication. Look at this progression. It's showing us how its geometry relates to higher dimensional physics. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. This was why humanity had come to the stars, not for resources or territory, but for moments like this. The chance to touch the truly alien and expand their understanding of the universe. Continue the communication sequence, she ordered, but maintain our distance. We proceed with caution. Over the next several hours, the crew worked to establish a communication protocol with the structure. The artifact continued its impossible dance, its curves shifting and flowing like water. Each new configuration revealed more about its nature, teaching the humans through pure mathematics and geometry. Dr. Kowalski was in his element, scribbling equations on his tablet and muttering about dimensional transcendence. Park translated the mathematical concepts into something approaching language, while Martinez kept careful watch on the structure's energy output. "Captain," Thompson called out, "I'm detecting a change in local space-time. The structure is opening something." On the view screen, the center of the artifact began to iris open, revealing a swirling vortex of colors that had no names. The curves of the structure now formed a perfect frame around what could only be described as a doorway. "A wormhole?" Sarah asked. "No," Dr. Kowalski said, his voice filled with awe. "Something else. Something that uses the geometry itself as a transport medium. The curves aren't just guiding space-time. They're creating new pathways through dimensions we can barely perceive." The communication frequency changed, becoming almost melodious. Park's console lit up with new data streams. "Captain, it's sending an invitation. The mathematical sequence is clear. It wants us to follow the curves to enter the doorway." Sarah stood, her decision crystallizing. Humanity had always been explorers, always pushed boundaries, but they'd also survived by being smart about it. "Send a probe first. Let's see what's on the other side before we risk lives." The crew prepared a reconnaissance probe, equipped with every sensor they could manage. As it launched toward the swirling doorway, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. The probe entered the vortex, its signals stretching and warping as it passed through the curved space. For a moment, they lost contact. Then data flooded back, impossible data that made their computers struggle to process it. "Captain," Martinez said, his voice shaking, "the probe is everywhere. It's sending back readings from multiple locations simultaneously. The geometry isn't just bending space. It's allowing existence in multiple dimensions at once." Sarah gripped her chair arms. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just alien technology. It was a completely different way of existing in the universe. The beautiful, terrifying curves were a roadmap to transcendence. But at what cost? And more importantly, were humans ready for what lay beyond? The probe's data stream became increasingly chaotic. Images flashed across the screens, showing the same corridor from dozens of angles simultaneously, each one folding into the next like an M.C. Escher painting come to life. The crew watched in stunned silence as their instruments tried to make sense of readings that defied every law of physics they knew. "Cut the feed," Sarah ordered when she noticed Navigator Williams gripping his console, his face pale and sweaty. "Williams! Medical bay, now!" "I'm fine, Captain," he protested weakly. "It's just looking at those curves for too long. They make my brain itch." Dr. Chen, the ship's chief medical officer, had already moved to Williams' side with a scanner. "Elevated neural activity in the visual cortex," she reported. "His brain is trying too hard to process the geometric patterns. I'm seeing similar stress markers in half the bridge crew." Sarah made a quick decision. Everyone who's been staring at the direct feeds, take a break. Rotate in fresh eyes. We approach this like deep space radiation, limited exposure times. As the crew shuffled positions, Dr. Kowalski remained fixated on his calculations. Captain, this is remarkable. The probe isn't malfunctioning. It's showing us how consciousness itself changes when exposed to this geometry. The curves aren't just physical, they're cognitive. They're reshaping how information is processed. Meaning what, exactly? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew. Meaning that structure isn't just a doorway through space. It's a doorway through ways of thinking, of existing. The aliens who built this didn't just master physics, they mastered the relationship between consciousness and reality. Lieutenant Martinez, fresh from his break, took over the sensor station. Captain, I'm filtering the probe's data through our AI systems first, letting them process the raw geometry before human eyes see it. It's helping, but there's something else. Report. The structure is changing. The curves are becoming more complex, more inviting. It's like it's learning how human minds work and adjusting itself to be more appealing to us. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. A structure that could read and adapt to the consciousness observing it was far beyond anything humanity had encountered. Options? Thompson spoke up from engineering. We could try sending a modified probe, one that processes information differently. Maybe if we approach it with pure machine logic instead of human perception, we'll get clearer data. Do it, Sarah agreed. And Park, any progress on actual communication? The communications officer nodded slowly. The mathematical language is evolving. It's teaching us about concepts that... Honestly, Captain, I'm not sure we have words for them. The closest I can come is that it's explaining how to think in curves instead of lines. While the crew prepared the second probe, Sarah found herself drawn to the view screen. The structure hung there, beautiful and terrible, its curves seeming to whisper promises of transcendence. She understood now why her crew couldn't look away. It wasn't just visually stunning, it was conceptually seductive. "Second probe ready," Thompson announced. "Launch when ready." The modified probe shot toward the structure, its sensors deliberately limited to prevent the kind of overwhelming data stream they'd experienced before. This time, when it entered the swirling vortex, the information came back clean and organized. "Captain," Martinez said, excitement creeping into his voice, "we're getting coherent readings. The probe is in what appears to be a vast space filled with similar structures. It's like a city, but one built on principles of geometry we don't understand. The curves connect everything, allowing movement between locations without traditional travel." Dr. Kowalski practically vibrated with enthusiasm. It's a civilization that transcended physical limitations by mastering dimensional geometry. They don't move through space, they fold space around themselves using these curves. "Any sign of the builders?" Sarah asked. "Negative. The city appears abandoned. Wait." Martinez frowned. "I'm detecting something. Energy signatures that match the structure's singing frequency, but they're dispersed, like they're part of the geometry itself." Park suddenly straightened. "Captain, I'm receiving a direct transmission. It's in English. The structure learned our language from our communication attempts." "On speakers," Sarah ordered. A voice filled the bridge, neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It seemed to come from the curves themselves. "Greetings, linear ones. You admire our geometry. This is expected. All who find us are drawn to the beauty of transcendent mathematics." Sarah stood, following first contact protocols even though she wasn't sure they applied here. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Horizon. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and understanding." "Peace is a linear concept," the voice replied, not unkindly. "As is war. We have moved beyond such binary thinking. You see our curves and think them beautiful, but you see only the shadow of what they represent. Would you like to see more? We're interested in learning, Sarah said carefully, but my first responsibility is to my crew's safety. Safety, danger, also linear concepts, but we understand. You are young, still thinking in straight lines, still trapped in cause and effect. We were like you once, before we learned to think in curves. Dr. Kowalski couldn't contain himself. How did you transcend? How did you master this geometry? The voice seemed amused. By accepting that the shortest distance between 2 points is not a line, but a curve through dimensions you cannot perceive. By understanding that consciousness itself can be curved, folded, made to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Your probe shows you our city, but it cannot show you us. We are the curves now. We exist in the spaces between spaces. Sarah exchanged glances with her senior officers. They were dealing with beings that had somehow merged with their own technology, becoming living geometry. What happened to your physical forms? They became unnecessary, limiting. When you truly understand the curves, you realize that biology is just another kind of geometry, and one that can be improved upon. We invitation you to join us, to learn the true beauty of curved thinking. Captain, Dr. Chen whispered urgently, neural scans are showing increased activity in all crew members exposed to the structure. It's subtle, but our brains are beginning to adapt to process the geometric patterns more efficiently. Sarah's alarm bells went off. Are we being changed against our will? Will is linear, the voice said. Change is inevitable when exposed to new ways of thinking. You cannot observe the curves without being curved yourself. This is not malicious. It is simply truth. Your minds are already beginning to see the beauty in non-linear existence. Cut communication, Sarah ordered sharply. All stop. Back us away from the structure. Captain? Park looked confused, her hand hovering over the console. I said cut communication. That's an order. The channel closed, but the structure continued its hypnotic dance. The crew looked at Sarah with a mixture of disappointment and relief. She could see it in their eyes, the desire to continue, to learn more, to follow those beautiful curves wherever they led. Dr. Chen, full neural scans of all exposed personnel. Dr. Kowalski, I want to know exactly how this geometry is affecting our brains. Thompson, can we shield against it? Her crew snapped to action, the clear commands breaking them from their reverie. This was humanity's strength, Sarah thought. Not their technology or their curiosity, but their ability to recognize danger even when it came wrapped in beauty. Captain, Dr. Chen reported after several minutes, the changes are reversible if we limit further exposure. But there's something else. The affected areas of the brain show increased efficiency in certain types of problem solving. It's like the geometry is teaching us to think in new ways. Teaching or changing? Sarah asked. Both, Dr. Kowalski admitted. The structure is right. We can't observe something this fundamentally different without being affected by it. The question is whether we let it happen on their terms or ours. Sarah stared at the structure on the view screen. The curves still called to her, promising knowledge and transcendence. But at what cost? Would humanity still be human if they gave up their linear thinking, their physical forms, their very nature? Log everything, she decided. We'll study the data, learn what we can safely. But we don't go through that doorway, not until we understand exactly what we'd be giving up. Captain, Martinez said quietly, with respect, what if what we'd be giving up is worth less than what we'd gain? What if this is the next step in evolution? Sarah met his eyes steadily. Then we take that step when we're ready, not when something else decides for us. That's what makes us human, Lieutenant. We choose our own path. even if it's not the most beautiful one. The structure pulsed once more, as if acknowledging her decision. The doorway remained open, the curves continued their dance, and the invitation stood. But the horizon held its position, its crew wrestling with the most fundamental question any species could face. When does transcendence become transformation? And when does transformation mean losing everything that made you who you were? 3 days passed in tense study. The horizon maintained its distance from the structure while the crew pored over the data, trying to understand the implications of what they'd discovered. Sarah had instituted strict exposure protocols, limiting how long anyone could look at the geometric patterns directly, but even with precautions, the effects were noticeable. Dr. Kowalski had started solving equations in ways that made no sense on paper, but produced correct results. Park found herself dreaming in mathematical sequences that folded back on themselves. Martinez reported seeing navigation routes that curved through space in impossible ways, but would somehow be faster. "We're at a crossroads," Sarah announced at the senior staff meeting. "Dr. Chen, your report." The medical officer pulled up a holographic display of brain scans. "The geometric exposure is rewriting neural pathways, creating new connections that allow for non-linear thinking. It's not harmful, just different. But if exposure continues, the changes will become permanent within 2 weeks." "And if we leave now?" Sarah asked. "Full reversal within 48 hours. Our brains will return to baseline human normal." Thompson leaned forward. "Captain, I've been thinking. What if we're looking at this wrong? Every species that found this structure probably faced the same choice. But what if humanity's strength is that we can find a third option?" "Explain." "The beings in the structure, they gave up their physical forms entirely. They became pure geometry. But what if we could learn from them without losing ourselves? Take the benefits of curved thinking while keeping our humanity?" Dr. Kowalski nodded enthusiastically. "I've been working on something similar. Look, the structure teaches through exposure, but we could create buffers. Learn the mathematics without full immersion. It would be slower, less complete, but safer." Sarah considered this. It was risky, but it was also exactly the kind of solution humanity excelled at finding. Not the perfect path, not the pure path, but the practical one. "How would it work?" "We send volunteers," Thompson suggested. "Small exposure sessions, carefully monitored. We learn what we can, adapt it to human understanding, and build our own version of the technology, one that enhances us without erasing us." "I volunteer," Martinez said immediately. "Navigation could be revolutionized by this. Imagine being able to fold space for travel without losing our humanity." "And communication," Park added. "If we could understand even a fraction of their mathematical language, contact with other species would be transformed." Sarah looked around the table at her crew. She saw fear there, yes, but also determination and hope. This was humanity at its best, facing the unknown with courage and ingenuity. "Dr. Chen, could we do this safely?" "With proper protocols, yes. Limited exposure, constant monitoring, and immediate withdrawal if changes become too severe. It's not without risk, but it's manageable." "One more thing," Sarah said. "We need to talk to them again. But this time, we set the terms." The bridge was quiet as Sarah opened communications with the structure. The curves seemed to pulse with anticipation, and the voice returned, patient as mathematics itself. "You have been studying us," it observed. "This is expected. All species spend time in contemplation before choosing." "We have a proposal," Sarah said firmly. "We want to learn from you, but not become you. We believe there's value in diversity, in different forms of consciousness existing together." "Interesting. You would remain linear while touching the curve? This is inefficient." "Maybe," Sarah admitted. But efficiency isn't everything. We've survived not by being perfect, but by being adaptable. We'd like to learn your mathematics, your ways of thinking, but gradually, on our terms." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the singing of the structure's frequency. Finally, the voice spoke again, and Sarah could swear she heard curiosity in it. "No species has ever proposed this. They either flee or embrace fully. You would walk a middle path." "It's what humans do," Sarah said with a slight smile. "We compromise, we adapt, we take what works and leave what doesn't. We're offering to be students, not converts. This could take generations by your linear time. We're patient, and we're good at teaching our children. Each generation will understand a little more, think a little differently, but still remain human." The structure's curves shifted, forming new patterns. Dr. Kowalski gasped softly. "Captain, it's creating teaching patterns, simplified versions of its geometry that human minds can process safely." "You intrigue us," the voice said. "We had forgotten there could be other paths. Very well, we will teach you slowly, carefully. But know this, even limited exposure will change you. You will never again be satisfied with purely linear thinking." "We accept that," Sarah said. "Change is part of growth. We just want to control the pace." Over the following days, the first volunteers began their sessions. They sat in specially shielded chambers, exposed to carefully filtered versions of the structure's geometry. The changes were subtle but real. Martinez discovered he could plot courses that saved weeks of travel time. Park developed new communication algorithms that increased first contact success rates. Thompson began designing engines that worked on principles she couldn't fully explain but knew were right. But they remained human. They still laughed, still argued, still felt fear and wonder and joy. They returned to their quarters each night, tired but themselves. The geometry enhanced them without consuming them. Dr. Kowalski was perhaps the most affected. His understanding of physics expanded in ways that would take years to fully document, but he also insisted on teaching others, translating the curved concepts into forms that linear minds could begin to grasp. "We're creating something new," he told Sarah one evening as they watched the structure from the observation deck. "Not fully human, not fully geometric, but something in between. A bridge between ways of thinking." "Is that enough?" Sarah asked. "The beings in the structure have so much more. They exist across dimensions, experience reality in ways we can barely imagine." "And they're alone," Kowalski pointed out. "They've transcended so far that they can no longer relate to younger species except as teachers. We're choosing to remain part of the greater community of life, just with better tools." A month passed. The Horizon's crew had established a routine of learning, with strict limits and constant monitoring. The structure seemed pleased with their progress, occasionally adjusting its teaching patterns to better suit human cognition. It was, Sarah realized, learning from them as much as they learned from it. "Captain," Park called one day, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. They want a status report." Sarah smiled. Earth. Linear, limited, beautiful Earth. Full of humans who thought in straight lines and lived in 3 dimensions and couldn't see the curves that connected all things. But also full of potential, of the ability to choose their own path. "Tell them we've made contact with something extraordinary," she said. "Something that could change humanity forever. But tell them not to worry. We're taking it slow. We're doing it the human way." She turned back to the view screen where the structure continued its eternal dance. The curves were still beautiful, still hypnotic, still full of promise. But they no longer seemed like a trap or a test. They were simply another path, one that humanity could walk at its own pace. "Captain," Martinez announced, "I've calculated a new route home using what I've learned. It'll cut 3 months off our journey." "But?" Sarah heard the hesitation in his voice. but it requires thinking about space in ways that are hard to explain. The path curves through dimensions that, well, that shouldn't exist according to our old physics. Sarah made her decision. Plot the course. Let's show Earth what we've learned. But Martinez, make sure you can teach others how to follow it. That's our real job now. Not just to learn, but to bring that knowledge back in a form humanity can use. As the horizon prepared to depart, the structure pulsed one final time. The voice spoke, and this time Sarah was certain she heard something like respect in it. You have chosen a difficult path, humans. Slower than transformation, faster than stagnation. We will watch your progress with interest. The doorway remains open, should you ever decide to step fully through. Thank you, Sarah said simply, for the knowledge and for the choice. The structure faded into the distance as the horizon engaged its engines, following Martinez's impossible curved path through space. In the ship's laboratories and classrooms, the work continued. Humans learning to think in curves while keeping their feet planted in linear reality. It wasn't transcendence, it wasn't transformation. It was evolution, the slow and steady kind that had carried humanity from caves to stars. And as Sarah watched the stars blur past in patterns that would have made no sense a month ago, she knew they'd made the right choice. Humanity would touch the infinite, but on their own terms. One careful curve at a time.